Hey craft nerds, how's it going? It's a dark day here in Australia where I'm at. The light is fading and it's raining. Perfect day for craft, I'd say. And I thought I would do a sort of a follow-on video almost from my last one about basic seed beading supplies, and do a video that was all about seed beads themselves. So I actually put an order through Shipwreck Beads to get a range of sizes that I didn't have on hand, the more hard to get, some rarer types of beads, because they had a pretty good range of some of the more antique beads and difficult to find sizes. And I thought I would talk about all the different sizes and show you the different sizes you can get, and some of the brands and just information in general, I guess, about seed beads for anyone who might be interested. So, I mean, I guess the starting point is to talk about firstly the different brands of seed beads. There's so many out there. You'll find that there are certain ones that people who are very interested in seed beading and do a lot of seed bead work will generally stick to mainly your Japanese brands of seed beads, or the Czechoslovakian, Preciosa, Ornella seed beads. The reason being is that they are the higher quality ones. So Japanese seed beads are known to be the highest quality. There's three main manufacturers of Japanese seed beads, and they're Toho, Miyuki, and Matsuno. Now, they're all fairly interchangeable as far as size goes. There is, I think it's the Toho Eiko are a little different, just in that they're even more precise and very, very expensive. But each of the brands has your round seed bead type and then your cylindrical seed bead type. You've got your Czechoslovakian seed beads, and the company since 2009 has been known as Preciosa Ornella. Ornella, yes. They are also a high quality seed bead, but probably just slightly less uniform than your Japanese seed beads are. And then you have other seed beads that are made in, say, India, China, or Taiwan, that are a lower quality seed bead. Of course, there's other seed bead companies around, and they're not the only countries, but they're probably your main ones that you'll see. I was reading into the history about this so that I could make this video for you guys, because I thought, I actually don't know when seed beads started being created, and the methods that they used to create them and that sort of thing. So I went to the Preciosa Ornella website to see, the history, because they had a fair bit of information about where they started and the history of seed beading from that region. From around the 1500s in Venice is when a lot of the manufacturing of seed beading is known to have started. It moved from there to Bohemia, and they used different a wound method of creating seed beads, which was a little bit more involved. From what they described, and hopefully I get this correct, they have a glass rod which they heat, and then they stretch the rod out to the size they want. Then they heat that and wind it around like a thin bit of wire to create the bead. So it's quite an involved method, and not used as much not sure if it's used at all actually, and from there they have to form it into the right shape and everything, so it's quite a long process. And the other method of creating seed beads was the drawn method. I think that's what they called it, where basically they would create a bubble in the glass and stick another rod into that, and while it's molten, of course, and then pull them, which would then create a cylinder because of that initial bubble that was made into the glass. It would pull it out as a cylinder, and then that was cut into the beads that way. And I believe that is now the more standard method, and you know, with all the manufacturing equipment and things that people have these days, I'm sure that must be quite a precise you know, and automated process rather than being a handmade process that it once was. Now the thing with Japanese seed beads is you will find that they're by the gram, you know, by weight is how you will purchase them, and that they're displayed in weight. The difference with the Czech seed beads is they are sold in a hank. Now a hank, I double checked because I've bought hanks before and I just couldn't remember how many strands they are, but apparently generally they are 12 20-inch strands. So 12 strands, each 20 inches or 51 centimeters, and they're usually doubled up and then they're tied into one bundle. So all of those strands are bundled up into a little ball and sold that way. There's even a seed bead calculator, so I'll link that because that could be helpful for people trying to work out how many beads are in a hank or in a gram, and that of course depends on the size of the beads and the type of the beads, because obviously they have different weights and different sizes, and a different number of beads can fit on a hank, or in a gram might be a different number of beads because of the size, etc, etc. So the Preciosa Raquels are anywhere between 1.5 millimeters and 8 millimeters, generally speaking, and their sizes 16 aught through to size 1 aught. The size aught, AUGHT, is how all seed beads are sort of measured, if you like. It's not a very precise measurement though. From what I could find information wise, all of the different brands, their sizes don't match, so you can't necessarily get a size 15 from one brand and it be the same size as another brand. The Czechoslovakian sizes also go past the 1 aught size and then jump for some reason to the rarer 31, 32, 33 and 34. Now anyone who does seed beading would presume that they're tiny little seed beads, because the higher the number, generally speaking, the smaller the bead, but those particular ones are quite massive and are actually known as potato beads as well. Now there's a few different names for different sizes of beads. The largest size generally, aside from those 30, 31, 32 sizes, is generally speaking, it is size 1. You can get size 24 down to size 24, but the sizes smaller than 16 are not manufactured anymore and are basically known as antiques. They're usually a Venetian bead that was created some time ago. From what I read, they stopped manufacturing those beads in 1890, so yeah, quite a long time ago, and the reason being is they're virtually impossible to use to get a needle through them. So now the sizes 5 or 6 beads are generally called pony beads. I don't know where these names came from, to be honest, so I'm just going to mention what they're known as, and you may have seen these names around. Sizes 3 to 4 are generally called trade beads. The sizes 1 and 2 are known as crow beads. There are also charlotte beads, and the interesting thing is charlotte beads actually means that the bead has been cut, and that means that one side's flat and it creates a bit of a facet. But charlotte beads are generally thought of, like the most common ones are the size 13 Czechoslovakian charlotte beads, and strangely I have found them to be smaller than a size 15 in the Japanese seed beads. So you can see it can be a little bit confusing when you are trying to use the different sizes. I would recommend, for the most part, if you're trying to follow a pattern, follow exactly, they might list the brand, and if they do, use the brand they mention. Otherwise, stick to the one brand when you're starting out, just so that you don't run into difficulty because of sizing differences between brands and that sort of thing. So I would probably recommend that. I also recommend trying to obtain the better quality seed beads. I always say this to people, and look, some people will disagree and have disagreed with me, but from my own personal experience, when I very first started, I used some cheap Chinese seed beads to make some patterns, and they looked nothing like the pictures, and I just couldn't understand what I was doing wrong, and because the stitches were right from what I could tell, but it looked terrible. And then I found the Japanese seed beads made the same thing again, and it was entirely different. It made such a big difference, and with the time you're investing into making something, I just think it's worth making sure the outcome is as good as it can be. Having said that, you know, there's different beads for different patterns. Sometimes things will call for a round bead, and sometimes they will call for a cylinder bead. So it really does depend what you're making. And I hope to have some videos about some stitches and things, so I can talk about that in a bit more detail. For now, I'm going to take you down onto the table because I've done enough jabbering, and let's actually have a look at the beads. Alright, so let's start with the smallest size I was able to get my hands on, and that is a size 22. Now, these are a Venetian micro bead. They're made in Italy, and I believe they're no longer made. These are so tiny, they actually don't fit past the head of the size 15 needle. I'll apologise in advance for the state of my fingers. I've been doing a lot of beading lately, and so I'm getting a bit callousy, but yeah, so I tested this out. It goes to the end of the needle, like it will thread onto the needle, but then not past that point. So some of them may go past the head, but it's not looking likely. And that could be why I got such a good deal on those beads. I think it was half a kilo for $6 or something crazy like that. No idea what I'm going to do with these, given that I can't put them over the needle. I will have to see if there's any thinner needles than a size 15. I've not seen them so far, but maybe they are around. So that's the size 22, and would you believe it, you can get even smaller. The next size I was able to get is a size 20. That's these little green ones here. Now the sizing, the aught sizing apparently refers to how many beads fit within an inch. Now, of course, that's going to change depending on the brand, depending on the finish and that sort of thing. But these two should be slightly different size. Don't know whether it will be enough difference that you'd be able to tell by looking at it. It does look a little bigger, the green one. They're also a Venetian made bead, the size 20. Let's try and pull it over the head of the needle. That one actually does go over the head of the size 15 needle. So there you go. I mean, looking at them, I can sort of tell that the green are a little bigger. Now, these ones are a size 18. Just going to pour out a few here. So apparently these are a size 18, again Venetian. So they should be a little bigger again than the green ones. So let's put all three on a... Yeah, you can tell slightly there's a different size to them, but it's obviously not a massive difference. And yep, that one goes over the head of the needle as well, as you would expect, because it is meant to be a bigger size than the green ones. Alright, the next ones along are a size 16. These are a Czechoslovakian size 16, so it will be interesting to see what these look like, because I have found sometimes the sizing of the Czechoslovakian ones is smaller than a Japanese of the same size, so that is kind of interesting. These are a lot larger actually than the size below it. It's the first time I've noticed a substantial difference of size, and that could be because it is a different manufacturer. One's made by Jablonix or Preciosa Ornella as they're known now, and one was made in Italy using traditional methods. So I probably don't need to do the test with the needle anymore, but I did just pull that through and it was fine to pull it through. The size of the bead doesn't necessarily mean you'll have a good size of the hole in the bead. Japanese seed beads typically have a larger hole for in the middle of the bead than the Czechoslovakian ones do. So something just to keep in mind. Trying to put these in frame so we can sort of see a little bit of each one. Okay, so the next size we have is a size 15, and this is quite a standard size, and it's actually the Japanese Toho brand I have right here. Now again, it's quite a lot different in size to the size 16. That could be, as I mentioned, I do find that the Czechoslovakian sizes to be a lot smaller than the Japanese counterparts. So that's a fair bit of size difference, given there's only one number of difference. You know, one is a size 16, one is apparently a size 15, but you know, the sizes, I wouldn't say that the sizes are stepping up in an even manner. They are stepping up. You can see there I've got them all on the needle together, so they are stepping up, but it's not as consistently as I would have expected. Okay, now I have a size 14. Now we are moving back into a Czechoslovakian Preciosa brand. So we just looked at a Japanese Toho and now we're back to Czechoslovakian. And that's just because these are the sizes I was able to get in the brands. But it is interesting to compare them. So this is the size 14 Czechoslovakian, and this is apparently a size 15, and then a size 16 again Czechoslovakian. It is a little interesting there. The size 15, the Japanese size 15, it's definitely thicker, like wider, and that's what you would typically expect for the larger size. So yeah, something just to keep in mind, that if you do want smaller sizes, definitely go for the Czechoslovakian ones because they are just a lot smaller. Now we are going to be moving into a hank to show you here. So we just had a look at size 14. This is a size 13. Now this is actually a Charlotte cut. So I don't know if you'll be able to tell, but on every so often you'll notice, depending on the direction the bead's facing, that there's a flat surface on one of the beads. Now that is because it's a Charlotte cut, which just means it's got one cut on each bead and it gives it a facet. I like these particularly, I think I've mentioned the sizes of these being different to a Japanese bead. So they're very handy if you need something that's just a touch smaller than a size 15 Japanese bead. Some others. They're all Charlotte beads. Have a nice sparkle to them. But yes, as I mentioned, they just also have a very good size that's handy for patterns. Now I do have a size 12. It will be a little bit difficult to see the size difference here, because these are actually a 3-cut bead. Now they are a size 12. I was hoping to get a round size 12 to show you, but I did also want to get some 3-cut beads. So the difference just being that there's more facets. Now I do find, generally speaking, the 3-cut beads to be quite uneven in size of the beads themselves. These are a Czechoslovakian bead again. Yeah, they're not great if you want uniformity. That's the problem. So you get that nice facet, and if you don't need a uniform size, these are great. But otherwise, now the next size is another standard size, and that would be the size 11. I'll move that over a little. So these ones right here are size 11, a very standard size. Let me just compare. You know, you've got your size 13s here to size 11. You've got, you know, your size 15s. So you can see the size difference between the 15 and the 11, two fairly standard sizes there. Unfortunately, the cut beads won't compare very well to that. The size 12s, just because they're a cut bead. But yeah, size 11s are definitely a staple. Now these are size 11 in a Toho bead, and these are size 11 in a Czechoslovakian style instead. So very, very similar. There are different colours that you can get in the Czechoslovakian one that you can't get in the Japanese and vice versa. So I like both. And I apologise for the flashing there. My light is going a bit berserk. Having some issues with my light. Yeah, so I really love a lot of the Czechoslovakian pastel colours because you can't find as many different pastel colours, I find, with the Japanese ones for some reason. Like here's a lovely kind of lilac colour. Isn't that pretty? And a lot of the opaque colours, there's a really good range with Czechoslovakian beads. And you can see this has come on the hank, which the larger ones will typically come on a hank. Of course, the very, very small ones that I showed you were not in hanks, probably because they're a bit harder to string. So these ones were not in a hank. Now, I have a size 10 to show you. Now, I don't know, again, that this will be much different in size to the Toho one because it's a Czechoslovakian bead. So, as I mentioned, the sizes seem to be smaller. So when I look at this, this looks very, very similar, if not maybe even a bit smaller than the size 11 in the Toho. So yeah, it can be worth your while getting a bit of both, because sometimes you'll find that one bead is just not quite small enough for you, so something else will fit the bill. Now, a lot of these striped beads are quite a vintage Czechoslovakian style. I'm not sure if they still manufacture these, to be honest, but quite often you'll see the vintage striped beads, and it's just a really interesting mottled effect, I guess, that it gives. You can get ones with all different coloured stripes and things on them. Usually quite primary colours though. So it's an interesting one there. Now I did manage to get a size 9 as well. Again, this is not one of the more common sizes. And I guess it's just, you know, there are just certain step-ups that people are tending to use more often in patterns, and so manufacturers are making more of them. So the standard ones I think I've mentioned are size 15, size 11, size 8 and size 6 are your most common sizes. But you do find some that are, you know, in the middle of those ones. So yeah, this is a size 9. So this is an interesting size, again, because it's one of those in the middle sizes that could be helpful if a size 8 is just a bit too big for you. Now I'll put a size 8 next to it and let's have a look at the difference. There is a fair bit of difference here, and you know, they are both a Japanese brand. Now unfortunately they don't note which Japanese brand this is. That's quite common for websites to do that, because the Japanese beads are fairly interchangeable as far as size and things go. The colours are a bit different though between the brands, but you can use them interchangeably size-wise. And some of the colours do cross over. I think Toho, I believe I got a chart somewhere that has the conversion chart between Toho and Miyuki, and they do that specifically so that people can pick the right beads from both brands and interchange them. And they note on that conversion chart that the sizes should be the same between both brands, which I find they typically are. I have had it mentioned to me that there's slight differences, but I haven't found that to be the case myself. I think that may have a lot to do with the finish on beads. You know, some beads are going to be larger or smaller because they've got coatings on them and things like that, so that can really make a difference. So that was size 8. Alright, so I don't have a size 7. There may be some size 7s out there. The next size I have to show you is a size 6. So that's your size 6, and there's a look at the size 6, the size 8 and the size 9 together. Now I did manage to get a size 5, so let's have a look at the size 5. So a fair bit of difference again between that and your size 6. This is again a Japanese brand bead, but you know, you can see it's jumping up quite a bit now that we're getting up to the larger beads. So yeah, the white one is the size 5 and then the teal one is the size 6. Okay, now I don't have a size 4 to show you, but I do have a size 3, so let's have a look at that. And again, this one jumps up a fair bit. So we're jumping up quite substantially now, and we're getting into quite large beads. These are still referred to as seed beads, but they really are drawing the line, I guess. They're getting a bit larger. Now again, I don't have a size 2, but I do have a size 1. So this is size 1. They are larger again than your size 3. However, these ones are the Czechoslovakian ones again. So the size difference between them is sort of negligible. Yeah, it doesn't really, in fact, they almost look the same size when I put them next to each other, don't they? And so it is a real difference when you use the different brands. Alright, now I did manage to get my hands on some of the rarer sizes. Shipwreck Beads had some of them available. So if you are looking for them, you know, have a look on their site. To be honest though, once we get into these larger beads, you know, they really are just like perhaps a pressed glass bead or what have you, and less of a seed bead. So these would be really more for stringing. So those ones are the White Heart Star Ruby beads. And the size of these is the 32/0. Now, very unusual. I can't find the reason that they jump from size 1/0 up to the 30 and 30 numbers. But for whatever reason, these large ones, that's how they size them. So that was the 32. I should have gone in order. I actually have a 31 here. I'll open that. Right, so those are a size 31. Really interesting finish on those. They're, very rustic looking. So I think they called these ones a primitive mix. So I'll show you the packet because you might be interested in those. I think they're really cool actually. Very rustic. Primitive's a good word actually. So that's those ones. And I have one more size here, which is the size 35. These are, I believe, the largest of these Czechoslovakian seed beads. And, you can see they're very large beads. These, to me, are moving out of the seed bead realm. And I guess that may be why they don't make these anymore, because it's more of a stringing bead than a seed bead. it would be quite, I mean, you can definitely weave these into things, but yeah, I think it does start crossing the line. Now, I'm seeing that the uniformity of these particular beads is really not great. And this could be because they are really a vintage bead. So the way they manufactured them at that time probably wasn't to the same level as what it is now. Now I'll just show one more in this video, and I'll actually split this off into another video because I have all the different seed bead shapes that I haven't started going into, but this has gone quite long and it's a bit much to take in one sitting. So, and hopefully even this isn't too much for everyone, because I know it is a lot of information and a lot of different beads. But I will just quickly show you the very standard beads as far as showing you some of the Delicas. Okay, so these are a Delica. Now, there's different names for these type of cylinder beads through the different brands. So these particular ones are actually the Miyuki brand, and Miyuki's cylinder beads are called Delicas. These are a size 8 Delica, something a little bit different. The Toho call it treasures. I believe they used to call them antiques, and apparently that became really confusing, which is understandable, because people thought they were an antique bead, and of course they weren't, they were a brand new bead. And the Matsunos, I'm actually not sure what they call them. I'll see if I can find out and put an annotation in, because I don't have the name, I couldn't get the name of those. I don't use Matsuno that often, so I'm not as familiar with them. Alright, so those ones there are a size 11. These, I believe, are also a Miyuki. I don't have the label on this tube, but from memory these were a Miyuki as well. So a bit of size difference between the size 8 and the size 11. Size 8 isn't very common. And I decided to stock some in my shop just because I thought they could be quite helpful, and, you know, just a different, unusual size to have. Now those ones I just poured out are a size 15 Delica, so smaller again. Again, they're not used as often. I think these are probably a little bit more useful though than the size 8s, to be honest. And I wouldn't mind getting some of these size 15 Delicas in my shop. I think they could be quite helpful. So I'm going to leave it there, because that's a lot of beads to see in one sitting. But look at all that lovely beady goodness. Oh wow, this light is driving me batty. It's flashing all over the place and making my eyes go strange. Apologies if you can see that in the video. I hope you guys enjoyed that video, and it wasn't a bit much with all the information that I was giving you in one go. But, you know, look, I thought it would be helpful to see the different sizes that you can get. Some of the sizes are a little bit difficult to get. Although shipwreck beads seem to have a really good stash. So if you are in the market for some of the different sizes, then, you know, go and check them out. I'll do another video with some of the other shapes of seed beads as well. Let's keep this series going for anyone who is interested in seed beading and wants to delve in deep. And, you know, I'll obviously do all sorts of my other regular videos as well, but, you know, for the next little while I'll do a few in-depth seed beading things to help those that are thinking about seed beading, or maybe do seed beading and just want to know a bit more about it. or for anyone else who just likes looking at pretty beads, which, you know, I do. So anyway, I'll leave it there. Thanks so much for tuning in, guys. Hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out on any of the creative goodness that we have on this channel. I aim to bring all the different facets of creativity that come with life into the channel in some way. So, you know, I'm just going on this journey and we'll see where it takes us. All right, thanks again, guys. See you next time.